Welcome, guys. Welcome. Welcome into the live. Welcome again, guys. I want to say thanks to you all for coming again. All right. We are going to try to get in our morning's reading. We already got in our Bible reading. We're going to get in our novel reading this morning. We're reading the book, The Atonement Child, a book written by Francine Rivers. We started reading it last night. And those of you who were here last night, you see how that book started out. It's very riveting, very captivating. And so today we are going to continue reading it. It started out a little bit sad though, because of what happened to Dinah. But we are going to continue the reading, and let's see how Dinah can overcome the adversity that had befallen her in the reading last night. So come on, guys, let us read and let us talk about the author's style of writing and the characters in this story. All right, so get ready. We're going to do this for about 30 minutes of reading. Will be enough for us for the morning. Last night we read about how Dinah had started school at this religious college, how she had met the man that she was apparently going to marry. He had engaged her, and she was doing pretty well in school, and she was planning on her life, spending her life with her fiance. And then, out of the blue, one evening, a man violated her in the worst possible way that a man could violate a woman. When we ended last night, she was at the hospital where the nurse and the doctor were doing their examination. Of her, taking samples, collecting her clothing, asking her the pertinent questions that's going to be used in the police investigation that's going to try to catch the perpetrator of this horrific crime. And so that's where it ended with Dinah last night. And so this morning we're going to continue with that part. But I'm going to read a little bit of the end part of last night, sort of to catch us up on where we were. The chances of that, let's read from right here where it says, we would start you immediately on estrogen. I don't want to start right there. All right, I'm going to start right here where it says, you can sit up now. Now, the doctor has finished examining her, and he says to her, you can sit up now, the nurse says gently. I'll have admissions, get all the paperwork going, Dr. Keenan said, turning towards the door. No, Dinah said, with her heart jumping. I want to go home. I understand your feelings, dear, but no, you don't. How could you? For all his assurances of wanting to make sure she was all right, she felt degraded. She had wound down to a strip of black tape on his recorder, and that would be turned over to the police waiting outside the door. You don't understand. She covered her face and cried. I'd like to keep you here overnight for observation, he said. No, I don't want to stay. I want to go home. We would start you immediately on estrogen therapy. She raised her head. Estrogen? Why? In case conception had taken place. Dinah felt all the warmth drain from her. She stared at him in horror as full comprehension struck. I might be pregnant? The chances of that are extremely small, but it's better to take precautions, she had said. Hey, Wolflogs, how are you doing, my love? Good to see you. If she had conceived, it was already too late. There may be some side effects to the estrogen. That's why I'd like to keep you here for one night, possibly two. Dinah sat on the edge of the examining table, her eyes closed tightly. She had attended several pro-life rallies with Ethan. She knew he was talking about an abortifacient. Oh, no, say first not hear that word they do. Abortifacient? Hmm. No, no. She shook her head. I want to go home, please. Dr. Keenan glanced at the nurse, and she moved to his side. They talked in hushed tones for a moment. Then the doctor left the room. The nurse put the blanket around her shoulders again. Dinah clutched it tightly. I'm sorry you had to go through this, Miss Carey. Dr. Keenan was only trying to make things easier on you. She offered her a cup of cool water. I know how difficult this is. If you'd rather not take the medication right now, that's fine. You can take it tomorrow. Dinah shook her head. You have been through enough tonight. You can wait a few weeks. If you miss your period, you come back and have a pregnancy test. If it's positive, you can have a menstrual extraction. Dinah didn't want to think about what the nurse was saying. Being raped was horrible enough, without considering the possibility she might have become pregnant. Oh God, you would be so cruel. Would you, Lord? You can take a shower now, if you'd like. Down the hall, in a quiet room, Dinah stood beneath a hard, hot spray of water, scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing. Still feeling dirty, she sank down hopelessly in the corner of the stall and wept. God, why? I don't understand. Why did you let this happen to me? Where were the angels that are supposed to protect me? What did I do to make you so angry? Someone tapped on the door, making her start. Are you all right, Miss Carey? I'm fine, Dinah said in a choked voice, huddling beneath the hot pounding water. I just need to stay in here for a little while longer, she said. Your roommate brought you a change of clothes. Dinah pushed herself up. Janet's here? Yes, she just arrived. She's in the waiting room. Officer Lawson is speaking with her now. Dinah closed her eyes in relief and leaned her head back against the wall. I'll leave the clothes on the seat for you. Don't feel rushed, Miss Carey. Take all the time you need. I'll be right outside the door if you need anything. Dinah sensed the unspoken message. The nurse would be far enough away to give her a sense of privacy, but not so far she would be left alone. Dinah emerged from the shower and dried herself quickly. She donned a fresh cotton underwear, a lightweight white turtleneck t-shirt, a pair of faded blue Levi's, and a cable-knit pale yellow sweater. Even after pulling on the white woolen socks and grey vinyl zip-up boots, she was still shivering. She couldn't seem to stop. The dark violence of the assault gripped her soul and wouldn't let go. Looking in the mirror, she saw the reflection of a face she barely recognized. Raking, trembling fingers through her tangled blonde hair. She tried to make a French braid. After a few minutes, she gave up. She didn't care how she looked. She just wanted to leave. She wanted to go back to her room in the dorm, bury herself beneath a mountain of heavy blankets, and never come out into the light again. The nurse ushered Dinah to the waiting room. She saw Joe first, standing in the middle of the room. His expression was filled with pain and compassion. Janet was sitting on the couch. Ethan stood near the windows. As she drew near, he turned and looked at her, his face etched with a terrible grief and anger. Janet bolted from the sofa and hugged her tightly. "Oh, Dinah," she said, crying. Oh, Dinah, come on, honey. We'll take you home. You'll be okay now. On the way out, Ethan touched her once. A brief squeeze on her bruised shoulder. She flinched and he withdrew completely, eyes shadowed. She felt his anger and was frightened and confused by it. Janet bundled her into the back seat of Joe's Honda. She kept her arm around Dinah, holding her close. Dinah, Dinah glanced up and saw Joe looking at her in the rearview mirror. His eyes were dark, reflecting her pain. There's a blanket back there, Janet, he said quietly, starting the car. Keep Dinah warm, will you? Ethan didn't say anything until Joe pulled out of the hospital's parking lot. We'll find the guy, Dinah. I swear. And I tell you. Joe glanced at him sharply. That's enough, Ethan. It's not enough. It's not enough by even half. Ethan's voice cracked. He turned. What did he be like, Dinah? What was he like? I want to know. I don't know, Ethan. She felt her mouth trembling, but she couldn't stop it. I never saw his face. All of a sudden, he was there, a shape in the darkness, and he grabbed me. Leave it alone, Ethan, Joe said firmly. The police will handle it. You're right. They'll handle it like they handled everything else these days. He kept looking at Dinah. You must have seen something. Weren't you paying any attention when you walked up Henderson? Leave her alone, Janet said. You act like it's her fault she got raped. I didn't say that. As soon as Joe parked in front of the dormitory, Dinah pulled away from Janet, and fumbled for the door handle. Joe got out of the car and opened the door for her. He helped her out. Contrite, Ethan caught up with them at the front door. I'm sorry, Dinah. I didn't mean, you know. I just want to go inside, she said. She pushed at the handle of the front door and unlocked it. Curfew had long since passed. Her heart hammered. The glass door rattled loudly as she fought to open it. Joe put his hand over hers. Easy. The house mother's coming, Dinah. She'll open the door. You are safe now. His calm, reassuring voice and presence calmed her, but only slightly. Mrs. Blight opened the door. She allowed Dinah and Janet inside. She'll be all right now, gentlemen. Thank you so much. We'll look after her, she said, and closed the doors again. Dinah glanced back at Ethan standing on the other side of the glass. She was thankful to hear the sound of the key turning in the lock. Mrs. Blight turned to her in concern and put her arms around her. I thought the hospital would keep you overnight. She wanted to come home, Janet answered for her, a solid presence on her other side. Hey, G, what's up? Well, that's all right, I suppose, if you are sure she'll be all right. She looked at Dinah, assessing her and grimacing in sympathy. I'll be all right, Dinah said, forcing a smile, wanting to allay the dorm mother's worries. She wanted to stay here, not in a strange room with strangers to care for her. I called the dean. I'll let him know you are here so he won't go to the hospital in the morning. He'll want to know how you are doing. Mortified, Dinah said nothing. How many people knew what happened to her? He's alerting the student body tomorrow to the danger in our community, Mrs. Blight went on. He assured me your name wouldn't be mentioned, dear, but it's important for everyone to be warned until this man is arrested. She pressed the top button. Dean Abernathy wants to save you as much as embarrassment as he can. She assessed Dinah's bruised face again. I think it would be best if you stayed in your room for a few days. But I have classes, Dinah said. I'll send word to your instructors that you have a bad case of the flu. They can send your assignments here.
And Janet can bring you your meals. How does that sound? Dinah nodded briefly as she stepped inside the elevator. I'll call your parents in the morning. Dinah. No, please don't do that. But they should know what happened, Dinah. There's nothing they can do. You just worry them. I want to forget it all happened. I just want to forget it. Please don't call my parents. We'll talk in the morning. You get a good night's sleep first, and then we will talk. Promise me you won't call them, okay? Do you think they'll blame the school? They'd be upset. I don't know what they'd do. Well, we'll wait and see then, okay? Janet stood by solicitously while Dinah got ready for bed. She asked how it all happened, and Dinah told her. She wanted to talk about everything, to pour out her anguish and fear, her feelings of shame and degradation. But at the facts, Janet grimaced in repugnance. I'm sorry I asked. We won't talk about it anymore. It's better you forget it happened. She pulled the blankets up and tucked them snugly around Dinah. Put it out of your head and get some sleep. Bending down, Janet kissed her forehead. I wish you'd called me. I wish you had called me. I would have picked you up. Dinah felt a stab of guilt for not having done so. She should have heeded Mr. Packard's warning. She should have asked Sally Wentworth for a ride. She should have listened to Charlie and watched herself. You said you were going to study at the library tonight. I didn't go. I went out with Chad for coffee instead, and then came back here and studied. Dinah didn't say anything more. She couldn't speak past the lump of pain tightening her throat. If only, if only. Will you be all right by yourself for a few minutes? I need to wash my face and brush my teeth. Dinah nodded, forcing a smile as she fought back the tears that burnt so hot. Janet picked up her pink silk pajamas and her toiletry kit, then turned out the bedside lamp. Opening the door, she pressed the switch for the overhead light and sent the room into total darkness. She stood silhouetted against the light from the corridor. I won't be long, Dinah. Try to sleep. Everything will look better tomorrow. She closed the door behind her. Turning onto her side, Dinah curled into a fetal ball, pulled the covers over her head, and sobbed. The next day, Dinah called Sally Wentworth and quit her job at Stanton Manor House. Surprised, Sally asked why. I'm going to put more time into my studies. She ignored the feelings of guilt that tugged at her. It was true, in part. She was going to have lots of work to make up once she resumed classes. If you need more money, I can get you $1 an hour raise. It's not the money, Sally. Really, it's not. She knew she would have to find some kind of job soon. She didn't have the luxury of not working at all. The scholarship took care of part of the tuition. Her parents paid the rest, as well as her dorm fees. However, there were still the expenses of clothing and books and her car. She had to pay for insurance and gas and repairs. If her car had worked last night, maybe. Mr. Packard had been asking for you. He'll miss you, you know. I know, she said, her throat closing up. She thought of the old man's warning and felt the added burden of not having heeded it. I can't help it, Sally. I just can't come back. She couldn't bring herself to even say she would come to visit. I guess I can understand your feelings. This isn't exactly a happy job. I enjoyed it. If that's true, you wouldn't be quitting. Are you sure there isn't more to it, Dinah? This is awfully sudden. She hesitated, then leaned her forehead against the wall. She couldn't bring herself to tell Sally the truth. It was too humiliating. And worse, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She was afraid, so afraid. Even the thought of being across town from the campus made her heart race. Ethan had gotten her car for her this morning, but but what if it breaks down again? What if Janet couldn't pick her up? What if Ethan was too busy? She would have to make that long walk down Maple to Maine and catch the bus. She would have to walk up Henderson past the park. No, she shook her head. She wouldn't and couldn't face it. I'm sorry, Sally. She was ashamed to quit without notice. She was sorry to leave Sally and Juan with added responsibilities. She was sorry Mr. Packard would miss her. She was sorry about everything. Well, I took a chance hiring a student. I should have known better. I'll have to work overtime until I can find a replacement. Don't expect a recommendation, she had said. There was a sharp click as Sally hung up. Over the next few days, Dinah tried to pour herself into her studies, but she found it difficult. She was so tired. All she wanted to do was sleep. When she did, she was tormented by strange, vivid dreams. She couldn't concentrate. Officer Lawson called and arranged a follow-up interview at Middleton's police station. He said he could send a squad car to pick her up, but Dinah said she would get there on her own. The last thing she wanted were rumors starting. Janet said the campus was already buzzing with the news of someone being raped in the community park. Ethan insisted he would drive her. When he picked her up, he said if anyone saw them at the police station, he had a plausible reason worked out. They were doing jail visitation and research. Let me do the talking, he had said. Neither spoke after that. He seemed preoccupied, grim, and her own thoughts were rushing headlong towards disaster. Her stomach churned. It was the first time she had left the dormitory since that night. Instead of driving out the east entrance, Ethan took his usual route straight through the front gate and down Henderson. She kept her eyes closed while he turned onto Main. Once at the police station, Ethan waited in the lobby. Dinah endured an hour of questions about the night of the rape. She mentioned the white station wagon with the Massachusetts plates. She couldn't remember any of the numbers or letters. Officer Lawson kept going back to the man again and again. Gently but persistently prodding for details about his appearance, voice, anything that might identify him. Was he tall or was he short? Was he heavy or was he thin? What was he wearing? Did he have any kind of an accent? All I saw was a dark shape. He didn't say anything. He just grabbed me. There was nothing conclusive to connect the man driving the white station wagon with the man who had raped her. She went home with a splitting headache that kept her vomiting half the night. Dinah returned to her classes 9 days after the attack. The first day was torturous. She had always felt comfortable around people. Now she was nervous with so many around her. Worst, her friends chose the incident as their primary topic of conversation. I wonder who it was. Maybe that girl from Maine. Didn't she leave school a few days ago? I heard she was pregnant. I didn't hear that. Really? What if it was her? Could you blame her for leaving? I wouldn't want to stay here if anything like that ever happened to me. Would you? Andrea, how are you doing? Andrea, I was waiting for you to come. I was waiting for you to come. Yeah? Welcome, sis. How you doing? Did they catch him? No. I saw a police car in Henderson yesterday. I think they are talking to all the neighbors, trying to find someone who might have seen something. It was in the papers yesterday that they're looking for information about the driver of a white station wagon with Massachusetts plates. My boyfriend doesn't think they'll catch the guy. He's probably over the border and long gone by now. Back in Massachusetts. I hope he stays there. I hope he has a wreck on the way. Doesn't it get you the willies thinking about it? I mean, can you imagine? I've been going down there every afternoon to study since I came to NLC. It sure doesn't have the same feel now, does it? Where are you going, Dinah? She blushed, trapped by the curious looks. To the Student Employment Office, she said, backing away, her books clutched against her chest like a shield. You already have a job, don't you? At Staten Manor House. I had to quit. I thought they paid pretty well. The pay is all right, but it's so far away and was eating into my study time. I'm going to see about getting a job here on campus. Lies, lies, and more lies. There were so many lies now. There's a job open at the library. I know because I just quit. Shelving books was a bore. She got the job, and by the end of the week, she had her work schedule. She started work on Monday. To all outward appearances, everything seemed fine. If she seemed to smile less, friends just assumed it was because she was distracted by midterms looming. Wasn't everyone? But deep within, Dinah knew she was shattered and didn't know how to put herself together again. She lay sleepless in her dorm at nights, a nursery rhyme running through her mind again and again. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. She wanted to talk about her feelings with Ethan, but every time she tried, he changed the subject. She felt the distance between them like a yawning chasm, growing at growing as each week went by. They still studied together in the library between classes. They still went to dinner on Friday and the movies on Saturday and to church together on Sunday. Yet she was left yearning for what had been. She missed the tenderness and intimacy they had shared. They had always talked about everything. They still talk, but not about anything that mattered. Not about what preyed constantly on her mind and heart. Not about whatever was eating away at him. Tonight, she sat in a small booth in a quiet Italian restaurant and listened to Ethan talk about his homiletic class. Over the, over the past hour, he had gone over 4 different ideas he was considering for his final presentation. The waiter had given them menus, returned to take their orders, delivered Ethan's salad and veal parmesan and her side order of pasta, and left the check. What do you think? He said finally, finishing the last of his dinner and looking at her over the edge of his water glass. Dinah pushed her pasta around the plate and raised her head slightly. What do you think? She said quietly, aching inside. She wanted to say, what is it you really feel about what happened to me? Do you blame me, Ethan? Do you think it was my fault I was great? She, she voiced none of those questions, but he must have seen them in her eyes because his face hardened. Why can't you just forget about it? Can you? I'm trying. I'm trying to forget it ever happened. His eyes were dark, though whether from anger or pain, she couldn't tell. She knew he wanted to forget about it, but burying it wasn't helping. She didn't know what she didn't know what would. I'd like to forget too. I would, but I can't. Every night I dream about it. She looked down at the red checkered tablecloth, biting her lips. If she cried, it would only make things worse for him. Maybe you ought to get counseling. She wondered if he realized how disproportionate he sounded, how uninvolved. Was this just her problem? Didn't it concern him as well? He was going to be her husband in a few months. Shouldn't he care about what she was feeling? What was he really telling her? She searched his face, hurt and confused. Maybe we both need counseling. Maybe we need time. You are angry. Yes, I'm angry. Of course, I'm angry. I'd like to kill the guy. I think about what I'd like to do if I ever got my hands on him. Is that what you wanted to hear, Dinah? Sits nice with my chosen vocation, doesn't it? It tears me up every time I think about what was taken. So if you don't mind, I'd rather not have this topic as a dinner conversation. He tossed his napkin on the table. Smacking up the check, he looked at it, dropped it on the table, dug for his wallet, and extracted a $20 bill. Let's get out of here. It doesn't look like you are interested in eating anything. He tossed the money on the table and slid out the booth. She didn't say anything on the drive back to campus. What could she say that would change anything? Ethan didn't tell her what was wrong, but she felt it. She saw it in his eyes sometimes, though he tried to hide it from her and from himself. She was defiled. Ethan pulled into a parking space near the dorm and shut off the engine. Gripping the steering wheel, he sighed heavily. I'm sorry, Dinah. I don't like to think about it, let alone talk about it. He looked at her bleakly. It wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. We'll just have to live with it. Live with it? The words reverberated in her mind. Live with it? Live with it. We'll have to live with the monstrous reality of what happened. It will grow like a living, breathing thing between us. A crouching beast waiting to devour. Oh, Ethan, I wish you'd hold me and tell me everything will be all right. He reached out then and drew her closer, but she felt the difference. His touch was tentative, almost impersonal. Will things ever be the way they were? She didn't have to look up at him to feel his withdrawal. I can only imagine, guys. I can only imagine. Imagine what happened to Dinah. Imagine that happening to you. What would you do? How would you handle it? This has to be very painful, not just for Dinah, but for Ethan as well. To think that the woman you are going to marry, you are thinking that, okay, we're going to start a life together. We're young people. We're going to start our lives together. Maybe neither of them has been defiled. We're going to say the word defiled before. And so they feel as though, well, they're going to be for each other. And then boom, here comes. Then boom, here comes the monster. The monster comes into their lives, in between them, and taken from Ethan what he hadn't even gotten yet. Can you imagine? Wow. And also, guys, look at this. In looking at this author's words of choice and the way this author writes, wow, it is so simple. It is so easily understood. You have absolutely no doubt what the writer is talking about. And you know, guys, I love this kind of writing. I love this kind of writing primarily because when I'm reading, I don't like to have to stop to go consult with the dictionary a million times to find out what this word means. Because even though you're trying to read and get contextual clues to figure out what the author is saying or trying to say, when you have to consult the dictionary so frequently, it takes away the joy from the reading. It takes away the desire to continue. Because each time it's interrupted, you feel like, oh, not again. And so with this, I got to give this author props. Yeah, I love the way she writes. But let us continue. It says, if God wants them to be, his words were like a blow. Dinah drew back and looked up at him, stunned. You think God was punishing me for something? You think he allowed it to happen because he wanted to teach me a lesson? Well, ain't that how you got to operate? We have read the Bible and that's how it is. Everything bad that happened to you gotta be a punishment. I don't know, but maybe or maybe not. We have always agreed there's a lesson in everything. Now look, I don't know why things like this happen. Why are there wars? Why do people in third world countries starve? People in America starve too. People in first world countries starve too. I can't pretend to understand the mind of God. All I do know is God has a reason for everything. He does. Dinah looked at him, sick at heart and sick to her stomach. Ethan had always been so certain he knew what God wanted. God wanted her to come to NLC. God wanted her to be his wife. Had all this changed? Turning away, she opened the door abruptly and got out. Dinah, wait a minute. Ethan got out on the other side. Dinah, don't be like this. She ran up the stairs and went inside the dawn before he could close his door and follow. Several girls were just coming out of the elevator when she reached it and ducked inside. She pushed the button for the third floor. Thankfully, Janet was out on another date, and she could be alone to think, to feel. She put her purse on her desk and sank down, head in her hands. She remembered the violence of the Old Testament. Aha! She remembered the violence of the Old Testament. It was filled with stories of adversity, slavery, and deliverance. The Israelites had wandered in the desert. Even after they entered the Promised Land, things didn't go smoothly. There had been wars, death, tragedy. The people were stubborn and rebellious. Prophets cried out for repentance. Israel turned away over and over again. God's people wouldn't listen. They wouldn't trust and obey. They were stiff-necked and headstrong, and God punished them in order to turn them back. Oh God, I trusted you, have obeyed you. All men sin and fall short of the glory of God. She tried to think how she had displeased the Lord. She loved him. Sometimes she thought she was born adoring him. As far back as she could remember, Jesus had been real to her. He was the bridegroom, the Holy One, her Savior and Lord. She had been raised to feel secure and safe and protected in his love. She had been taught that his loving hand was in everything, in everything. Are you in this, Lord? Are you? God is the potter, and I am the clay. She could see her mother smiling and saying, God is molding you into a beautiful woman he wants you to be. Oh God, why have you crushed me? Why have you cast me into the pit? Aren't acts of violence wrath in retribution? Oh Jesus, what did I do to displease you? Was it because I was too proud of Nathan? Was I too happy about marrying him? Was it because I didn't spend enough time with poor people or with poor Mr. Packard? Was I rude to that man in the white station wagon? Haven't I prayed enough, Lord? Have I loved Ethan more than you? Is that why you have put all this wall between us? Oh, Jesus, what did I do wrong? Oh, Jesus, Jesus. Then the telephone rang. She knew it was Ethan, but she didn't answer. All right. Okay. That is where the reading is going to end this morning. The reading of the Atonement Child. And I haven't read the entire book, but I am wondering if this Atonement Child is the child that has come about as a consequence of the grape. Well, I don't know yet. We don't know yet, but we are going to find out together. All right? So that's where we're going to end the reading this morning, guys. Once again, I want to say thanks to everybody who came into the live. I sincerely appreciate you all. It is Friday, so I'm going to be up and running. When we come back, tomorrow we will continue the reading of this book. All right, guys, until then, until next time, this is Trev from Trebestins, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great day, guys. See you later.